And that was that was after a deep indoctrination of, going to Catholic school, grade school, high school, going to a Jesuit university, and, and having a good life in that tradition. And that's how easily it went. That's each of us has our own understanding of what discipline is. It was like all that other stuff, it was like, man, but then you actually create a great discipline. Thing that will help us in that moment is how we've treated others. There is this real, beautiful harmony and balance to how you're living your life. Because your practice is your center. That's your core. So everything you do emanating out from it, then you can see how when you're on the job, so that's why you can see how that's how you can really start to shift your entire mindset. There is no off switch to your practice then, because it's the center of everything that you do. That's a good homework question. I'm glad they asked that. So the death meditation was the second preliminary. The third one was suffering, and it's it's amazing. The first Panchen Lama, which is the first Panchen Lama, was actually the tutor to the fifth Dalai Lama. And that's basically how the Panchen Lamas have served, for hundreds of years, up until the recent situation. And they basically were the tutor, and they were also, if something happened to the Dalai Lama, they could step in. It literally translates as great scholar. And so the first Panchen Lama, whose name was Lobsang Chuki Gyaltsen, who was also, this is a guy, if you want to look him up online, because he did so much and was an unbelievable practitioner and was able to write poems about it. that will break your heart open. And it's because of the fact of that he talks about how much he struggled, which, several hundred years ago, back in that day, was, no one on that level would do such a thing. And then they'd read this poem, by literally, this is the person who's teaching the Dalai Lama everything about how the whole universe is working. And then he writes this poem, and it's just like, oh my God, the heartache, because of, what he was saying is that because people, excluding enlightened beings, couldn't see what was going on in his mind as he was trying to do his practice. So because, fortunately, this goes back to this place of that place of pain in our heart is the opening to how we can care for other beings. He then articulated the sufferings in terms of 6 sufferings, which is, why 6? I don't know. But, he was able to break it down more specifically than the 3 we discussed last week. And the first of the 6 is that life has no certainty, which is obvious to us, of course. And we see this in the way that, because our past actions and our mental afflictions determine our lives, then each of us can look in our lives and say, yeah, she and I used to be such good friends, and that changed. So that's how we can see it working. Life has no certainty in that way. Great friend one day, your ultimate enemy the following day. We can literally destroy an entire relationship in about 5 seconds with just the right words. And that is a suffering condition. So he put that as first. The second is we can never truly be satisfied. And it's funny in some ways when you think about it that the normal reaction that we have to pleasure is that rather than satisfying us, it creates more desire for it. That's how we're really working. I mean, honestly, when the chocolate chip cookies are coming out of the oven and they're on the tray and they get placed on the plate and you take one bite, do you honestly put that back down and walk away? Because for me, that has never happened. There's just no one bite to the warm chocolate chip cookie coming out of the oven. It literally seems impossible to me to do that. And because all that did when I had that bite is oh God, I want more of that, and thank God there are 12 more, And then of course we go to the other extreme, which is this is the most delicious thing ever, and about by the 10th cookie, it's maybe not. So that's the other way it goes, is that, there's no satisfying us. That's the situation. The third suffering is that we shed our bodies over and over again. And we'll get into the deeper levels of this later. But, even modern science has been able to break this down in terms of that our whole cellular makeup changes every 7 years. So it's good to even have an understanding on that level, that's happening physically, at a physical level. We'll get into the deeper levels of what that really means. The fourth is that we take birth over and over again, which we'll discuss more later. But you can think of it, practically speaking, when I reflect back on my life, I could easily say it feels like, yeah, I've had 5 different lives in this life. I look back to my life 10 years ago and I'm like, yeah, that was a whole nother life. I mean, and it gets to the point where you really start seeing it that way. You know, and you sync that up with like, and my whole physical body is changing, you know, every 7 years. And so then you start taking all of these physical factors, and then you add in what we're going to be doing with this practice, and you start to see like, oh, you know what? This does make sense. This does make sense. And that's important, is that it makes sense, that it doesn't stay as some kind of ethereal understanding. The fifth is that we go up and down, or sometimes they say we take high and low positions. I like to think of this as that this is the roller coaster. You know, it's the roller coaster of our lives, through good times and bad times. And it can happen literally 3 different times in a single hour, you know. It's sometimes I think this can be like the one piece you need to be able to sync all of this up, because when you start thinking about that, just thinking whatever later tonight, whatever, if you're eating something, you're talking to someone, things were going well, but then it started like, I don't know, you started to get a little bothered by like what they were saying. It's like, geez, the conversation was fine, So you go immediately right to this fifth form of suffering, like this is how things are working. It's constantly this. And I mean, and it gets to the point that the measure of that gets so distinct. I mean, it looks like a Richter scale of like an 8.0 earthquake, of that's how much it's happening. Like, all right, yeah, right now I'm a little overheated, and so forth, and I'm fairly focused, but what was I going to talk about? And you just see that this is how your life is flowing. The sixth is that we ultimately have no companion. We are alone. We lose our friends, we lose our loved ones, we even lose our bodies. So, and you can certainly put your mind up there as well. And when we say we lose our mind, that's very specific in the suffering way. That's actually very apt. If it were only so easy that we could actually lose our minds, because that's the thing, is that the mind goes on. I mean, the mind goes on until we get into, when we'll talk about emptiness, then you can see how you can truly upend that. But, for the most part, this is this is not meant to depress us, and it can be, I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm, listening to the teachings, of Lama Marut and Geshe Michael, so be focusing in on this stuff for hours. Eventually, it's really good, because I'll find that my state of mind at certain point in listening to these, I'll be like, oh man, I got to get the hell out of here, like immediately. The situation is not good. But what's important here, the reason that it's not meant to really get us in a bad state, is that there is a goal. And the goal is that we have these practices that are rooted right here in the Lojong, that help you to embrace the fact that these are the conditions of our world and the fact that we are going to die. That's exactly what it does, is it gets you to the point of embracing it and you're facing it. Because as some of us may already know, is that, the older you get, it's not like it's going to get easier to do a spiritual practice. So any thoughts of like, yeah, once I got to get this job situation worked out. Once I get where I'm only working like, 20 hours a week or something like that, then I can really deepen my practice. We know it doesn't work out so much that way. There are physical aspects in our lives of that, yes, if we create more time in our lives to devote to our spiritual practice, we can do that. You can do that mindfully. But that's the whole rub, is that you have to do that mindfully. That has to be part of your complete motivation as to, why would I want to be working fewer hours? Why is it that for others it might be the fact of like, no, I need to get a job, But then you would say to yourself, well, why is it that I need to get a job? And so if your motivation is because I need to put this stuff into practice. And I know very well that the best way to do that is to get a bunch of these people I don't really know up in my face wanting things from me from 9 a.m. to 8 o'clock at night. It's always said in this lineage about like the people that piss you off, that rub you the wrong way, these are your greatest teachers. They're the ones that are going to give you tremendous acceleration towards realizing all these goals. So the best way to do that might be to throw yourself into some office and say, I'm going to spend 50 hours a week here and do this. Or it's the other way. Same thing is what your motivation is going to be. But the key is just that you're not postponing any of it for some more ideal situation. Because that impression on your mind does the same thing. It's the impression on your heart, which is that then I can. Only then I can, with that. And that in and of itself is a limitation. This is what's really where we get tremendous traction out of the death meditation. So even on the most basic level, if when after you wake up, you sit down and you think to yourself, I'm going to die today at 6 o'clock. What should I do? And you do that earnestly. You do that earnestly. And if that gives you some, if your immediate reaction to that is to be trite about it, then it's definitely something you should do. Because there's something there in the way you've thought about life in the past that if you're looking for where the depth of your practice is, you'll see it in where there's the great resistance. So we all have great resistance to thinking about our death seriously. And it's not like this is the first time you've ever heard something like this. But to literally at the start of each day to sit there and think like, I'm going to die at 6 o'clock, so what am I going to do today? If you do one thing differently with that intention, that's going to build. That's the only thing it can do, is to create another opportunity of like, that person that I've been having that problem with, I'm going to call them, and I'm going to resolve that today. It goes on and on and on. I'm not going to eat what they put out for lunch today because that stuff is killing me, so I'm not going to eat it today, Whatever it is, you're saying to yourself, yeah, because, and see, this is the thing about it, is that because that could be the case. That could be the case. And it might not be 6 o'clock. It might be earlier than that. And it's the way in which you can actually live the life you want to live. See, that's why it's not about some fear tactic in that way. It's a liberator. And there are the ways that people use that as a form of liberation, which is jumping out of a plane and skydiving, and then going off, traveling the world. And you can do those things. Do those things if you feel you need to do it. Do those things if you feel that is something that's going to be a part of living the life that you want to live. And then ultimately, what you'll find out is like, maybe you've had a great time. You will have enjoyed the skydiving experience and so forth. And then and then what'll come down to it is that it's amazing. It starts to reveal itself in a very clear way. It's like, okay, and what is that about? what is that about? Well, why did I want to skydive before I died? Why was that so important to me? And so it immediately really does start to clarify in your life what is. Because there's a large percentage of our minds and our memory that are devoted, it's literally devoted and filled with so much stuff that's not that important to us. If I ask you right now, how many pairs of jeans do you have? Do you have a number in your mind? And if I said, what's really the difference between them? And so if you could think, well, I got that black, and there's the other one's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a darker blue, it's an indigo. If you're dying at 6 o'clock, do you want to be occupying your mind with something like that? Does that really matter? How many pairs of jeans you have? What colors they are. And see, this is the thing about it, is that it starts to clarify that, starts to create space in your mind of that, this is what's important to me. So if it leads to the fact of you have more meaningful interactions with the people you engage in the course of the day, that you feel less burdened, you think about how, down from like, if you do have a job that you have to go to, there's just that can feel like a burden. Amazingly, even though it might be providing you your income, that you can have a house and enjoy the things that you do in your life, and you have food on the table, and you have several pairs of jeans in your closet, we've all had that feeling of like, no, I got to be at work tomorrow. Right there. So if this starts to lighten that up a little bit, then you will absolutely get a tremendous amount out of this practice. And more importantly, we'll be able to reverse those 6 sufferings. Because that's what the Lojong does, is that it reverses them. It doesn't deny them. It takes what the conditions are of this world and of our lives, and it turns them in on itself, and that's where the transformation happens. That's where you're refining your mind, that's where you're refining your heart, the way you're living, and then eventually, all of these things that have been causing so much trouble, they end up, believe it or not, being the sources of your greatest happiness. It ends up being what frees you. So let's take a break, and then we'll come back for some more for meditation. Ooh. Michelle, can you hand these out?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks. All right. Well, last week when we did the breath meditation, we were practicing one of the most fundamental core ways to prepare our minds, to get our minds nice and focused and centered and calm and quiet in order to do the main meditation. And what's great is that there is this perfect recipe that they've given us called the meditation preliminaries, usually, and it's known as 7. Not to confuse you with the 7-step Lojong practice, which is kind of why I broke it out the way I did on this, because there's actually a few steps before you get into those 7, but it seemed important enough for the homework and the homework questions that they wanted to go through this. And the truth of the matter is that this is Geshe Michael talked about how if you're able to get good at the preliminaries, then life is doing pretty good. You are doing pretty good, because it's it actually takes you kind of through the whole path. In a very, very subtle way, it takes you through the whole path. It also is a tremendous seed planter for a teacher to see this person in your life, is to simply do this, and what's really great about that is that that's for someone who's like, never thought I needed a teacher. And you start doing it, and suddenly you see some of the reasons why you might want one. Or secondly, for those who are seeking and have had difficulty seeing this person in their life, it helps to ripen that. It plants those seeds beautifully in your mind for that to happen. And then for those who are blessed to have a teacher, it strengthens and deepens the bond and connection you have with that teacher tremendously, which is also why you would do this before each meditation, because they end up, even when you get into, there's countless meditations, and we're going to be doing a nice variety ourselves, but when you're able to bring this being in front of your mind as a living source in your life, then that helps to make it all possible. Otherwise, it can be like pictures, just pictures in your mind, just a movie going on. It's the same thing as going to ArcLight, and we're here for something much more profound and real than that.
Just a quick question. The difference between these preliminaries and the 3 preliminaries.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes, the three other preliminaries, that they are ways also to prep your mind for the main meditation, and you could do those. You could do a rejoicing meditation before you go into a main meditation. This is primarily when you'll find kind of this almost kind of becomes more like your kind of oxygen in a way. Like, okay, you'll get skilled enough that it's like you'll go through this quickly even before you would then do, and it's like, all right, this is now I'm actually centered enough I can possibly meditate right now. So then it's like, and I'm a little bit anxious, so let me do a rejoicing meditation to settle me down, and then I'll go into my main meditation. Because right now, of course, I can see why I could be like, all right, man, that's a lot of that's a lot of stuff to deal with. But that's basically how they function. So they're both preliminary. This one, though, is the stock foundation, preliminary. It's essential that if you want to realize the goals of any of this practice of meditation, that you have to try to do this every day, period. I mean, it's as simple as that. You have to try. That's the impression that you want to make on your mind. Because anything that you try to do every day is pretty damn important that you're aware of. And that's, so you're putting on clothes. Most of you maybe, I don't know. So you put on clothes, you do choose to breathe, you do eat every day. You've shown how these are very important. So if you say, and I'm going to do this, which could potentially lead to me living in eternal happiness, you make that, you make it all possible for yourself. Because otherwise, it just becomes, you could so very easily make this as ordinary as everything else that you do. And that's one of our sufferings. That's one of our sufferings of what we can do. So you want to do that for yourself. And certainly, for many of us, it's good to get physical with it. And I don't mean in terms of your posture, but I mean, we talked about you go to your home, you create this sweet, quiet, calm space in your house. And now it's now, coming from a theater background, it's natural for me to get into this, but it's like, all right, now I want to give some set to this, so I'm going to create an altar, and that altar, what's so great about the altar is that really does become this it becomes this very personal manifestation of what this practice means to you. Now what this tradition can do is provide things that you can put up there and have meaning and so forth. But ultimately, what's on that altar is what you respect, what you love, what you cherish about this life that's been good for you, that's been virtuous for you. So it makes sense that you'd put some, images of those people, or whether you've known them personally or not, that you love and you admire. And then it's very good to put 3 objects that do, for you, represent enlightened body, speech, and mind, whatever that might be. For instance, the traditional would be for the body that you would put a statue of someone or something that you respect in that way. The speech would be a book. Me personally, one that I love is Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, which is, when we get into it, you will realize, oh, here is someone that perceived how ultimate nature of reality is working, and they just wrote a long poem about it, very clearly. Both what his experience was of it, and also how you can do it yourself. And it is so great that he puts this hysterical title of Song of Myself on there, because that's exactly what he's completely obliterating, is that he's obliterated himself and he's turned it into a song, and that's that right there is part of the majesty of art. It's like a total elimination of what you thought was your life, and you turn it into this beautiful poem. So you can put a book on there. And then for the mind is usually, the traditional way is a stupa, which often represents, the enlightened mind of the Buddha. But it's good to put those objects up there, and then it's very good to make a physical offering, because so much of this can be this. It's especially if you have roommates or something, and it'd be like, what the hell are you doing, man? You know, like, you see you setting this up, and if you say, hey, I want to keep this personal, but, you know, don't be alarmed. You don't want this person to be afflicted. But especially when you then make a physical offering of some type of food and water, you know. So, you know, we do the traditional water because we're fortunate enough in this society that most of us have that, you know. So it's like, I don't have any, I would love to put, you know, a 20 karat pink diamond up here on this altar right now, but I don't have that, so I'll put a bowl of water. And you can actually put it up there with the motivation of that, and that's as valuable as that 20 karat diamond. Because the truth is, ultimately, it is. And, you know, and some other type of food as well, because that's something that's so kind of core important about our own sense of this existence. So you see yourself offering that. And then it's great, then it's very, very good to do some type of bow to it in whatever you might translate that as to what that kind of physical prostration looks like for you. Basically, what you're doing in that moment is, you know, when we have this image of putting our head down, there is something there where suddenly you're letting go a little bit of the ego that we have. I mean, we almost kind of, we talk about this as kind of being like a submissive position, you know, that in an afflicted way. But what's happening there is this like, okay, I'm actually going to let the ego off my shoulders a little bit and honor that which I really respect, you know. And that's what this altar, you're choosing these objects here and saying that's what this whole thing is going to be representing to me. It's my own little private world here of what I'm trying to do with my life. And so I bow down in front of it, you know, because that's what can create the space in your own sense of being that you actually then can get rid of your ego. I mean, that's the only, you know, that's not the core subject of this class, but that's certainly our core obstacle in doing any of these practices is our sense of our ego. So this is a very beautiful way of being able to let go of that a little bit. Now let's actually look at these. Preliminaries quick. I'm going to go through them quickly because then I just want us to actually do a meditation on it. You know, it is, you know, I should mention this actually, that it's important when you start out doing these, it's going to take you some time just to get the rhythm down, to know what each step is, what's the next thing that you're doing. So it's fine that when you're starting out that you have it in front of you and you're like this, and you're like, okay, focus on that, all right, because it does become a process of memorization. But then once you have the steps down, you really don't want to take more than like 10 to 15 breaths, and whatever that kind of time equivalent is for you to move through them. Because otherwise you'll get bogged down, or you'll end up then rushing yourself in the meditation. And this very much comes from experience. When I had heard Geshe-la talk about, like, yeah, if you really get the preliminary meditation, you know, like you're going, I was like, yes, you know, I will focus on this, because for, you know, whatever karmic reasons, it came very quickly for me. So, but then I just found that I was like blissing out in the preliminaries for like 30 minutes. And I was like offering and rejoicing and dedicating and so forth. Then it was like, and the main meditation, 2 minutes, you know, like, and it was, so yes, that was a very important lesson for me to learn. And I certainly pass that on to you, because what it really is doing is it actually is clearing out the negative karma that you've got kind of just that's immediately ripening in your mind. It's clearing that out. It's nice and purifying that. It's building up this good, clean state of mind, so that that's the state of mind that you want to take into the main meditation, because it can so easily switch in a matter of moments. And then you'll find that once you start getting the rhythm and the dance of it, then you come out of and this is the enlightened aspect of it, why they've given it to us, is that when you go into the main meditation, you have dropped in. Like you are in the groove, and so it's seamless, and they've set us up perfectly to get into whatever the main thing was going to do. And so it might end up just taking you, 3 minutes, to get to that place after you've gotten very well versed in it. So we talked about this first initial step, not step 1, but up at the top about focusing on your breath, which you know, and then we take refuge by calling to mind our highest ideals, and this is where you're thinking about things that calm your heart, that just really. It calms your heart. It also opens up your heart at the same time. And each of us has very specific ideals in our life of what is most important to us, what we think is a good way to live our lives. That's what you bring to mind. And for those who, are practicing particularly in this path, that would be bringing the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to mind, going for refuge in that. And in that sense of the sense of the Buddha is that you're taking refuge in the fact that this mind has the exact same potential for enlightenment, just as the Buddhas did. This is how he started out, just like all of us in this room right now. So that's why that can be such a place of motivation, is like this mind has that same potential. And it's a matter then, so how's that going to happen? So then you take refuge in the Dharma, which is the path to perceiving that potential directly. So, which we label emptiness, but it's really being able to perceive ultimately how things are working. And then the Sangha would be certainly, on a very basic level, those people, those like-minded people in the community, the people that you do connect with, and then particularly for these specific practitioners, it's usually your teacher. It's those people that you think have perceived the ultimate nature of reality. So if you think Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Mother Teresa were people that really understood how things are working in this world, like they really had a sense, I think that they knew, then those are the people you're bringing to mind because you have those connotations with them. So yes, then we move on to thinking about helping others, the desire to serve them. This for many of us in this path is what we kind of refer to as sparking our bodhicitta, which sparking that up, getting that fire going, which is the wish that you become totally enlightened for the sake of every living being. That's our dictionary definition. Next, we visualize a holy being sitting in front of us. And this, of course, is critical. This is someone, this is really, it's obviously someone you highly regard, as a teacher, but you want to take this to the place of inviting the holiest being to meditate with you. Whoever you think that is, you bring that person there. And the truth is that if you do bring this being that is of this tremendous virtue, but then you don't feel really connected to it, which is the other critical aspect of that, then choose someone else, because you do need to feel it. You need to feel that connection. And I know for some people it's like, they have the utmost respect for Gandhiji and so forth, but when they think of us, they don't feel any personal connection. But in the meditation, if that ends up more being your mother or your brother or your lover, then that's the person that you bring right there. And it's as a help to kind of visualizing them, because sometimes that can be a real challenge initially with really trying to see this being. You start with the outline of their body, and then you see them being lit from behind, so that actually makes the outline of their body more crisp and clean. And then once you feel like you have that, then you start to see their eyes, and you work out from their eyes. You start to see their eyes clearly, you start to see the color of their eyes, then you start to see their face, then you start to fill out the rest of their body. And what's really good is that if you can then start to have, you start to sense their qualities, so you see them blinking, you see their chest, rising and falling, and then you also start to sense them in the sense of that you hear the sound of them breathing. You also you catch the scent of their body. You feel the warmth of their body. All of these aspects are so that this is a living entity within your mind at that time. And now we have step 1. Yeah. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this right into meditation, because I can feel that you guys are ready for that. So let's get in a posture. In our favorite posture. Take a few deep breaths. And then just start to quiet your breath. Just let it start to fall slowly. Bring to mind this person who you admire how they live their life. You want to be like them because of how good they are and how well they treat others. See them sitting in front of you, eye to eye. And they are very happy that you invited them here to meditate with you. Focus on the qualities of them that you admire most and you want to emulate yourself. Offer a gift to them. And that gift can be the meditation that you're doing right now. It can be something you did earlier today that you consider to be good. It can be something that you plan on doing later tonight or tomorrow that you think will be good for others. Or it can simply be a beautiful sunset. Now you want to take a moment to do a confession with them and purify anything that you think you've done earlier today that was harmful to yourself or someone else. Bring that misdeed to mind. And take refuge in your highest ideals. And visualize clearly whatever that act was that you did where you failed to live up to those ideals. See it and feel it. Make a promise right now that you will not do that thing, that act again for a specific period of time, whether it's for 5 minutes, the rest of the night, or tomorrow. But make a promise to yourself that you won't do it for that time. And now think of something you can do to make up for it. Something specific, something reasonable. Now you can rejoice in something that you did today that was good, that was helpful. And if it's difficult to think of something that you did, rejoice in something that you saw someone else do that you thought was great. Now look at that holy being sitting in front of you again and ask them to teach you teach you what you need to learn to live a happy life. Pray that this person and anyone else who is a good influence upon you, pray that they stay in your life and that they live a long, healthy, happy life. Now see this holy being start to become smaller and smaller, almost down to the size of a pea pod. And you see them rise up in the air, and they come right above your head. And they face in the same direction as you. And within your body, starting from the crown and running down in front of your spine, down to your heart, is a small, thin tube, glistening, shimmering with light. And that holy being enters through the crown of your head and moves down through this tube towards your heart. And when they arrive in your heart, you have created there a total paradise for them. Whatever it is you think that they would love. See them shining there in your heart. It's bright white light that shines out of their heart, out of your heart, out of your body. And this light just radiates out through the entire world, touching every living being. Dedicate the good you've just done to becoming enlightened so that you may truly relieve the suffering of others and cultivate their own enlightenment. Start to deepen your breath. Relax your focus. And you can open your eyes. So those are the preliminaries. And the only difference is that dedication at the end, you would actually do that. And when you bring the teacher into your heart, you would actually do that after your main meditation. But you can see how that could be all you needed right there. I mean, there's just everything there. Everything there. So this is a holiday for some of us in our practices. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you who have come tonight, so that we could put our minds and hearts on this, because it's an incredible, auspicious offering to be able to think about this stuff for 2 hours, any day of the week, but particularly on a day such as today. So by all means, do your own kind of celebration tonight for showing up, because there's so many other things you could have done, and but you chose to come here. And thank you so much as well for contributing the donations that people have done for the class, which keeps this center alive and gives us the opportunity to do this. So it could not happen without you. So whether it's your first time here or your 50th time here, or I hope it is something that through the rest of the week that you feel the worth of that. And not only the worth, you feel the warmth of it. If you feel some warmth in your heart because of doing this, keep on doing it. So enjoy the meditation. Thank you.